Are you ready? Buffalo's first news in the early morning.
Of all the unusual critters native to New Zealand.
Security.
Security breach. Intruder alert.
CNN Radio News. I'm Harry Beadle. CNN Radio News. I'm Harry Beadle. We don't know if it's terrorism or an accident, but there's been a powerful explosion in Jalalabad, Afghanistan today. CNN Radio's Matthew Chance reports there are conflicting reports on casualties.
The official that we've been speaking to here in Kabul, official of the Defense Ministry, can confirm only 4 people dead at this stage. Other reports, though, trickling out of the area. One quoting now the Associated Press, quoting a local military commander, is saying that 12 people have been killed, but many other injured. It does seem to have been a serious explosion.
The explosion occurred in a building belonging to a construction company. There's been more religious violence in Pakistan. CNN Radio's Ashar Karashi reports the target was a Christian hospital in Islamabad and 3 nurses were killed.
Officials at the hospital say that 2 or 3 men approached the compound. After a scuffle with the guard, 2 men entered the compound and lobbed grenades into a crowd of staff members that were exiting chapel services this morning.
One of the attackers was also killed. Iraqi opposition leaders meet with U.S. officials in Washington today to discuss the possible overthrow of President Saddam Hussein. Sharif Ali bin al-Hussein says it would have public support.
We, the opposition that you see outside, and the opposition that you don't see inside, will rise up against Saddam in the event of a U.S. attack.
Al-Hussein is spokesman for the Iraqi National Congress. WorldCom says it's found more problems with its accounting. CNN Radio's Andrew Stevens has details.
Telecom firm now saying that its accounting scandal was much bigger than previously thought. WorldCom says it's uncovered an additional $3.3 billion worth of improperly booked revenue. That's on top of the near $4 billion of misstated sales that WorldCom reported in June. 2
former WorldCom executives are charged with trying to hide expenses from investors and federal regulators. This is CNN Radio News. Kansas is the latest state to report West Nile virus. Health officials say a horse that died there this week tested positive for the disease. Illinois has recorded its 2nd human case of West Nile, and Florida's issued a virus alert after finding some infected birds. Most of the cases have turned up in Louisiana, and CNN Radio's Rory Souchet reports the state is getting about $3.5 million to help fight the outbreak.
The latest report from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention state Louisiana has 71 confirmed human infections and 5 people are dead from the West Nile virus. This marks the biggest outbreak of the disease since its detection in New York in 1999. Experts say the elderly are most susceptible to the illness. Rory Souchet, CNN Radio, Atlanta.
About 20 researchers from the Centers for Disease Control are in Louisiana now to study the West Nile virus outbreak. This is news from CNN Radio. Looks like Wall Street may be ready to take a breather. Futures are trading lower before today's bell, suggesting an open on the downside. Now there have been 3 winning sessions in a row. As we hear the latest from CNN Radio's Claire Leka.
The Dow rocketing 255 points. The blue chips are now up 650 points over the past 3 sessions, with the NASDAQ going along for the ride as well, soaring 35 points. Bank stocks leading the charge, with J.P. Morgan jumping 9.7% and American Express up 6% in the session. Claire Leka, CNN Radio at the New York Stock Exchange.
We are expecting a bit of mixed economic news today. Productivity is expected to have slowed in the second quarter of this year, rising only about 0.5%. And so-called unit labor costs are expected to be up 2.7%. Unit labor costs are the rate of change in hourly pay minus productivity growth. Harry Beadle, CNN Radio News. CNN Radio News. I'm Harry Beadle. Looks like a downside open for Wall Street today. Despite last week's gains, futures are lower before the bell, and market analyst Stu Johnson thinks it'll be a while before investors regain full confidence.
The most important thing, stable markets will start to allow confidence in the markets to start to be rebuilt. then investors will come back in. That takes a little bit of time, though, I'm afraid.
The Fed may help a bit. It meets tomorrow, and some analysts expect a cut in interest rates. And President Bush is trying to help. He hosts an economic summit at his Texas ranch tomorrow.
They're going to be talking about creating jobs, expanding opportunities to save and invest, providing a good education, and encouraging small business creation and home ownership. These are the type of things that will be discussed in these sessions. They're 90-minute discussions. Many of them will be led by some of the biggest CEOs in the country, but also we'll be hearing from ordinary folk.
That is CNN Radio's Suzanne Malveaux. A lack of money has forced U.S. Airways into bankruptcy, but CNN Radio's Tim O'Brien reports company officials say they're optimistic.
The worst news may be for stockholders. The U.S. Airways stock closed at $2.45 a share on Friday, up a nickel, but shareholders may lose their investments. How long will it last? Well, of course, nobody can say for sure, but airline officials said they hope to emerge from bankruptcy a stronger, better, more competitive airline by early next year.
For now, U.S. Airways is still in the air. But money is also an issue that could prompt a strike in Major League Baseball. The big issues, taxing teams that go over a salary cap and sharing revenues with the less wealthy teams.
I think the ideal is to try to create a system where there's no more than a 2-to-1 ratio between the highest paying club and the lowest paying club.
That is NBC sportscaster Bob Costas on CNN's Larry King Live. This is CNN Radio News. Former M-Clone CEO Sam Waxel will be arraigned in federal court in New York today. We get that story from CNN Radio's Gary Baumgarten.
Waxel is charged with secretly advising family members to sell their shares of the company's stock after learning that the cancer drug his biotech company was promoting had been rejected by the FDA. Meanwhile, Waxel's friend, TV celebrity Martha Stewart, will likely be subpoenaed by a congressional committee where she will be asked about her involvement in possible insider trading. Stewart sold nearly 4,000 shares one day before the stock nosedived. Gary Baumgarten, CNN Radio, New York.
Wednesday is the deadline. The SEC has given hundreds of U.S. companies to certify the accuracy of their financial statements. So far, none of the early filers have indicated they need to restate earnings. Federal prosecutors have called a grand jury to look into whether Kmart's collapse involved criminal wrongdoing. This is news from CNN Radio. In Russia, heavy rain and flooding has killed at least 55 people along the Black Sea coast. More rain's expected in southern Germany today, where several states of emergency are in effect. Heavy rain burst a dam in Austria. The water is rising 2.5 inches every 10 minutes. CNN Radio's Ramgopal reports the situation is similar in parts of northern India.
Heavy rains in the past 2 days across the entire north have basically caused havoc, especially in the hills of Uttaranchal state, which is about 300 kilometers from New Delhi, where it's in the foothills of the Himalayas, and where yesterday, that is Sunday, there was an enormous cloudburst which swept away entire parts of whole villages.
And in southern Asia, the problem is air pollution. A 2-mile thick cloud of smoke, ash, acid, and soot is expected to cause widespread health and environmental problems. Harry Beadle, CNN Radio News. CNN Radio News, I'm Harry Beadle. President Bush is taking his message of economic optimism on a 2-day swing through the upper Midwest.
Our farmers and ranchers and working people are incredibly productive. Interest rates are low. Inflation is low. Wages are rising.
Many economists agree with the president that the economy is sound and the recovery is slow but on track. But a new consumer index poll by ABC News and Money Magazine finds only 32% of Americans think the economy is in good shape right now. The close of business today is the deadline. The SEC has given many U.S. companies to certify the accuracy of their financial reports. But John Gavin of SEC Insight says some companies will refuse, citing what's known as GAAP.
GAAP, of course, is the accounting standards, generally accepted accounting principles. So what we suspect may be happening is a lot of executives are looking back and saying, hey, it was in compliance with the standards, therefore we're going to stand behind it and make that our defense.
Many smaller firms have until December to certify their reports. It's another so-so day for the markets now, following yesterday's refusal by the Fed to cut interest rates and today's word of more big layoffs. IBM is cutting 15,600 jobs, about 5% of its workforce worldwide. And CNN-FN's Deborah Marchini reports Ames Discount Stores is going out of business, laying off about 22,000 employees.
The company said it is going to close 327 store locations. That's all of them. The stores will stay open for about 10 weeks. Now, the Wall Street Journal had reported this morning that Ames, which is in bankruptcy, had been pressed by creditors to liquidate and was unlikely to emerge from Chapter 11.
Right now, the Dow is down about 66.5 points. The NASDAQ is up 14. The S&P is up 1. This is CNN Radio News. Police in Abilene, Texas are investigating the kidnapping of a month-old baby grabbed yesterday from her mother's van. Karen Wilkeson of CNN affiliate KTXS says police think the family was targeted.
They weren't sure when this whole thing broke out about 4:30 yesterday afternoon. They weren't sure if it could have been a domestic dispute of some sort where a relative may have wanted to grab the baby, but right away they ruled that out, and it's since been very much a shock for this community.
In Los Angeles, police have charged Patricia Corneo with the kidnapping of 4-year-old Jessica Cortez. Corneo was arrested when she took the girl to a clinic.
The little girl apparently complained of a sore throat. That might be the sole reason, or it might be as well there was such public information about this, and we were closing in on several suspects, or people we thought at least at the time were suspects. Maybe this woman just felt the pressure of all that.
That is interim Los Angeles Police Chief Martin Pomeroy. This is news from CNN Radio. The severe flooding that has hit parts of Europe has now taken at least 94 lives. Hardest hit areas include southern Russia, Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic. Thousands of people have been forced out of their homes. And CNN Radio's Mike Hanna reports emergency crews are shoring up riverbanks in Prague, trying to save historic buildings.
The waters may be subsiding in parts up to the north, but here, further to the south, the waters continue to rise, flooding through the center of Prague with immense speed, immense velocity. This river is now running at some 5,000 square meters per second. That's around 18,000 feet per square second. Now that is 30 times as strongly as the river would normally run at this time of the year.
And in the United States, wildfires are still a problem. 11 are still burning in 7 western states. People are being forced out of their homes near Denver. Harry Beadle, CNN Radio News.